Whenever I've had a major instance in my life, he's the first person I call. Sometimes I ask myself, did I have an impact today? And so if I did, then I'm living out my purpose and I'm living out who I believe I am. But there's some days that I struggle with that. Some days that I have, am I enough? Have I done enough? How come I'm not meeting the expectations of my family?
Expectations are where shame's coming from.
When I think about expectations, I immediately go to what others have told me who I should be or what I should do. I'm one of those big visionary thinkers, and I'll say, I'm gonna do this, this, and this, and then if I don't hit that, have I let myself down? Have I let others down? And so I strive to be a person who makes an impact in other people's lives. The day I got my doctorate, there was...
Welcome back, everybody. We are back again for Flipping the Lid, and you know what we do here by now. We love to have real, raw conversations with the real ones in life. Those that are having influence and impact in their lives, the ones around them, and that you can shorten your curve to learning to. And sometimes we've got a deep, really profound rap sheet of who someone is and what they do, and other times their presence speaks for themselves. I had the chance to interview Dr. B on my last show, and it was just obvious the authenticity, the connection, the joy, the freedom that comes from this man. But he also has a journey that he had to overcome a whole level of significant struggles that he, like many of us, was put into containers and labeled in categories that he also became his identity that he had to unravel years later. But he's used even some of those harder, most challenging moments to drive the transformation and the impact in his own life and in others. And just his perspective and grounding and how he brings and lights everyone up is why I'm so excited to have a conversation with him today. So, Dr. B, my friend, I am happy to have you here, bro.
I am so excited to be here. Thank you for having me. Let me be on here. The conversation we had before was so amazing. I am just ready to go. Like you said, we're going to talk about whatever we need to talk about in ways that most people maybe not want to, but I'm excited to do it and to do it with you.
Yeah, man. Well, I appreciate it because, I mean, you do have some special nuances as well, just with your timeline, with education, with knowledge on different components on helping people and in their own elements of development and upbringing. I mean, I know we'll get into some of that as well, but one of the things that I want to just ground this with, and it's the only question I ask every guest on this show, and I've already asked you on the other show, so you may be ready for this, you may not be, but outside of however I introduced you and the little bit I shared about what you do, who are you in your words?
You know, one of the things that I struggle with sometimes when I think about who I am I the guy when I wake up in the morning that I say that I am to everybody else? And, you know, I don't know if it was you, whoever asked me last time, what does impact mean? And I've really been thinking about it lately is, you know, I say impact means when I walk out the door, did I change somebody's life in some way for the better or to make it, their life a little bit better? And then sometimes I ask myself, did I have an impact today? You know, and so if I did, then I'm living out my purpose and I'm living out who I believe I am. But there's some days that I struggle with that. Some days that I have, am I enough? Have I done enough? How come I'm not meeting the expectations of my family? How come I'm not meeting the expectations of the man that's in the mirror? You know, sometimes, I'm one of those big visionary thinkers, and I'll say, I'm going to do this, this, and this. And then if I don't hit that, have I let myself down? Have I let others down? And so I strive to be a person who makes an impact in other people's lives. I think I was put on this planet to help other people do what they were put on this planet to do. Whether I've achieved everything that I've wanted to or I haven't, that doesn't stop me or preclude me from being able to help others get there. And so that's what brings me joy. That's what brings me, I guess, happiness. If we're all in this pursuit of happiness, then that's what it is. And then why should I be doing anything else? And you think of all the things that other people told you that you should be as you're growing up. And what I realize now that I'm 60 is I'm never going to live up to those expectations, because they're their expectations, not mine. And so that makes it a little bit better right now to just be able to say, yeah, that's who Brian is. Brian is that guy who goes out there that you can count on, that you can believe his word, and he's going to do everything he can to help me.
Yeah. And I mean, every single thing about your energy, your words, your just heart, your presence all suggests that, right? Like you learned very early to put a smile on your face and not necessarily fake, even though sometimes I'm sure it was. And yet you've also found a way to allow that smile to actually produce real, authentic joy within yourself and ground yourself through all of it. However, you said something at the end that I think is extremely powerful. And I do want to unpack a little bit further. I know that it was one of the greatest lessons in my life. And frankly, one that I'm still learning. but it's this concept of expectations, right? Expectations, both that are put on us and the ones that we put on ourselves. Right. And I've found that the removal of expectations not only is one of the most challenging things to do, but it is one of the most freeing when we're able to do it. And so I'd like to maybe just have you take a second and almost as if I had asked you to define impact, like, how do you define expectations? And what has been your relationship with expectations over the decades of your experience?
Yeah, man, what a good question. And when I think about expectations, I immediately go to what others have told me who I should be or what I should do. I immediately jump there first. And then I compare myself to that, whatever it is they say. And so, let's say it's you're a kid and your expectations are to go to school and get these great grades and have this great education, right? So that we can be whatever somebody wanted us to be when we grow up, right? And so you have to get grade A. You have to get good A's. And when you come home, in some households, we're going to reward you with money for that report card. And some of it, we're going to beat you because you didn't get what we thought you should get. And so it's almost as we're growing up, because I think we turn up in this world as a blank slate. And it is our parents, it is our community, it is our world that live around us tell us how we should live. Who should we associate with? Hey, you don't want to hang out with those guys because those guys are bad news. Well, what is good and bad? We have to determine what that is. We have to determine, okay, when you think about the expectation, like for me, I grew up as a special ed student and I had no desire to go to college. But our society said, you're going to go to college. You need to go to college, until I took the ACT test and failed it miserably, or the SAT test and failed it miserably. Then they were going, well, we need to find a different path for you because we don't know what you've been doing the last 12 years that you've been, or 11 years, whatever, when you take that SAT. Oh, but you're a good athlete. So now our expectation is you go to college on an athletic scholarship. And some of those things I'm glad I did. But then I look at all the folks, even as me as a teacher, where my expectation for other people, that they'll never be able to meet my expectation for them because it's my expectation. And now if I look and I reverse it from my world, I'm going, wait a minute, you're expecting me to show up this way. Like one of the things, I don't drink alcohol. I drank it once when I was 18 years old. I fell down in the snow. My friends laughed at me and they wouldn't pick me up. And I think my toes got frostbitten on them that day. I'm like, this is stupid. This is dumb. I don't want to ever do it again. So I just don't drink alcohol. And so, but there's an expectation, right? When I go to parties or I go to places that, oh, well, you need to be in this crowd, then this is what we do. And you need to have this, I guess you need to let yourself down, whatever it gives you so that you can be more, out there and be able to say things you normally wouldn't say. And then, so that's the expectation. In order for me to say what I need to say, that I have to have alcohol behind it. Well, I figured out how to do it without the alcohol. I'll say whatever I need to say. Yeah. But then again, that's somebody's expectation put on me, right? That's somebody who has said that's how it works for me. And then that must be how it works for you. Yeah. And I think why I've been successful in being able to help people is because I show up without expectations. I say, what is it that you want? And let's help you get there. Yeah. Now, obviously there's some societal norms that we have to adhere to. The expectation is that I don't drive 120 miles down the street in a school zone, because it could kill somebody. Yeah. So there are some things that we do absolutely in order for us to be in a society adhere to, but there's so many things that we don't.
I don't, there's a lot of nuance to what you just said. And I appreciate that because we're going to unpack some components of it even deeper. By the way, I think that expectations are not the same as like rules, guidelines, or standards, especially at a society level. Yeah. Okay. Like to your point, like for a society to function, we need some level of structure. Yeah. Right. Like it's unfortunate. It'd be great if every single human could be completely sovereign and self-regulate and make all the right choices and not hurt each other and make right. But we're not, that's not how we're wired. Right. So there is some level of reason to, again, I would call those more boundaries, rules, structure, right? That we need to hold people accountable to. Yeah. Expectations, though, what you just said, and this is very, very clear. You even said the same word probably 15 times in the first part of it. I didn't count, but you said should. It's what I should be, who I should be.
Yes.
And should in and of itself is a shame-based word. It implies whoever you are, whatever you're doing, it's not good enough. And so to your point exactly, expectations become the filter that take us away from who we were born to be and instead who the world has told us who we should be. Right. And that is where it's very, very fundamentally different, because to meet someone where they are, it's to be objective and non-judgmental. Right. But then also to your point, expectations can be limiting. They can be way beyond what someone else's reach is. But expectations are where shame's coming from. And we're performing into shame and breaking apart all these different pieces that ultimately leave us feeling empty, right? Because we've lost touch with who we are. And if it's based on all of these other pieces, then I'm never going to be good enough. Right. And there was a couple things that you said that I wish I could remember the exact words. If they're relevant, it will come back, because there was a couple points that I wanted to hit on in there as well to just deepen what you had suggested. Because truly, to your point exactly, expectations I don't ever see driving growth.
Yeah, they don't.
It causes people to shrink. It causes people to hide. It causes people to avoid. Right. And it's often those expectations, again, that we adopt for ourselves that started because someone else layered it on us, because they themselves can't see themselves in who we are and what we're capable. Right. And so it's just a fascinating thing, because even down to the level of even what you suggested, and there was a word that you used, and I hope this one comes back because it hit me really raw and I meant to like grab it and hold on to it, but I was so present with you and I surrender to that typically. But in this case, right, you even said to yourself, I was considered a special education student.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which in and of itself is a label.
It was 100% label.
Right. And I'm going to call it what it is without hopefully having you receive any age shame from this, but I'm 40 and you're 60. Okay. I know that the resources when I was a kid and the knowledge around the way our brains work and neurological wiring and neurodiversities and different ways that we learn. And when I was a kid, we didn't have near enough knowledge, like a fraction to what we have today. And I am sure that 20 years prior, it was even worse.
Oh, gosh. Yeah. There were field trips that I went on a short bus, just because that's where the kids with Down syndrome and the kids with autism wasn't a thing then. It was either Down syndrome or,
Right.
severe special needs. And because I was in those classrooms, we would go on a field trip into the Museum of Natural History or something. And then we would get the tour that those kids could get. And you just go, they had zero clue. It was, you have to be removed from a mainstream or whatever it is during the day until you can catch up in maybe the subject PE that you can thrive in. And so, yeah, the resources not even close to where they are now. And it was a label that all the other kids knew because of the way they did it. Like, they would come into my classroom and pull me out after morning and all the other kids that I was now grouped with. And then that became the label that who became me without outside influences that would help.
Yeah. And again, none of that actually has anything to do with who you are.
Nothing.
It's external judgment based on, especially then, very subjective and limited information that went into the testing to determine whether or not you were actually right in special education. And I highlight this and slow this down because, look, you had a very specific label, right? And it was one that your peers saw, your teachers saw. It confined you into spaces, right? And there's many people in the world who experience that with the color of their skin, their cultural descent, their socioeconomic benefit. But especially when we start looking at intellectual and representation and trying to become an identity and have and establish ourselves as adults, like, special education implies that you are limited and don't have as much or are as capable as others in a neurotypical way, as we would call it today. Yeah. Right. And I know that's not true for you. So that's what I'd like to take a step back with, is in this journey, right? You had these expectations that limited you. Even said it. It was always an external piece that caused me to feel not good enough, to shrink, to make myself small, to whatever, right? I failed these tests, but I still went on to college because I wanted to learn and I wanted to do these things. And some of this I also know was to prove to others that you could. And some of it was for you to actually prove to yourself that you could and find those pathways to free yourself from the label. So can you talk to us just about that journey, right? You talked about going on the small bus, but like, how did it shape your identity in those first 15 to 20 years in those educational experiences? And what did you believe you were going to be capable of back then that you've shattered in your lived experience today?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. You used the word earlier, the word shame, which later on in life, I learned that is probably one of the most hurtful, harmful emotions that is out there. And it wasn't until I was able to say, I'm not ashamed of who I am, then I could move forward, that I could achieve. When I would set goals, now I can create expectations because I'm not saying I'm not enough. I'm saying I'm more than enough to be able to do it. Yeah. And I think what happened is because I was not good in one area, I was able to, they say if you don't, hear very well, you might see better. Or if you can't see very well, you can hear better. Well, if I can't read and write very well, then maybe I can speak better, or I can talk better, or I can use that same part of my brain that allows me to achieve. And what I realize is my ability to speak, my ability to communicate, my ability to feel empathy was a superpower that I began to have, that because other people, where they would struggle in relationships, I would thrive in relationships. And then when technology started catching up and I had the equalizer of I can now type an essay and the computer can spell check it for me, and then somebody else can help me with that part of it, or I can now speak to the computer and those words just show up the way they're supposed to, because that's how I communicated. Oh, now the world is mine. The world is an oyster that is open to me that will allow me to thrive. And it's through people that have been in my life that saw that in me and were able to pull out the good. And in most cases, it was coaches that were in the athletic realm, because I was a good athlete. I was able to go to college on a athletic scholarship. I had an amazing coach that had no expectations on me other than helping me be the best I could be in anything I did in college. And we went on walks. Like, he literally walked around the track with me 3 times a week, and we just talked. Who gets that? Or you just, not in his, realm. I feel sorry for some people today that just do everything through typing, because I can't imagine having the deep relationship and conversation with a man who took his time to walk around the track with me, 3 times a week for 45 minutes and just feed into me. Yeah. And so that, that's part of those things that, I get emotional thinking about, just because, man, if he doesn't do that, where is my life?
Yeah, that's extremely powerful. And I want to honor him and actually unpack that relationship just a little bit further, because there is significant inflection points, oftentimes through a mentor or somebody who finally sees us right beyond our packaging, who, is our champion, is our victory. And yet sometimes people go a lifetime and never have someone in their life that way. It is a more common story to hear that it was a coach in athletics, right? And someone else. But if you were to contrast the relationship you just described with this particular coach with your parents, the upbringing, the teachers that you had, like before him, who saw you, who understood you, and who shined light into you?
Yeah. Well, we all have moms. Yeah, well, not everybody has a mom. Some people are unfortunate enough where there's something happened with their mom. But my mom,
you're right. Not everybody has an active, alive mom, but technically everybody has a mom.
That's true.
Technically, that would have to be true.
Yeah, you're not here if you didn't have a mom at some point. That is so true. But, I think of her just loving on me like nobody else would. My dad was present. And so, I had a 2-parent family that they wanted it the best for me. They allowed, I think more than anything, I remember the experiences that I was able to have because they let me out of the house to go do it with whoever. If somebody wanted to take me water skiing and I didn't know how to swim, my dad's like, go for it. You want to take me skiing, or you want to take me cliff diving, or they gave me so many experiences that I think are important. I am so glad that we didn't have screens and we didn't have, the social media that kids today have, and the, watching the television. We had, I don't know how many channels. We had 5 or 6 channels, and we had,
and they were on an old knob dial, weren't they? Yeah.
And we went outside. I mean, I can remember when the street light comes on, check in, because I know you guys are going to play hide and go seek for another hour, And so those are those things that for me were just priceless in growing up, and those experiences that we have. And then, I can say there might have been a couple teachers. my mind goes more to the negative teachers than it goes to the positive teachers. But I know there were some that were in there that, I mean, I can read. So somebody taught me to read, and somebody had to spend the time to be able to do that. I just remember the impact of the negative ones that were there. I went to a church, we were involved in a church, and I had a church community that was there to help me. Back in those days, all the moms and the dads and the grandpas and grandmas in the neighborhood, you running down the street messing up, they'll whoop you till you get to your house, And so, it took a village, it took a community that fed into me, that allowed me to experience. I can remember, like, one of our church trips was to a Navajo reservation. My grandma's Choctaw, so I was excited about going to a different reservation and seeing what that looked like, and then spending time just being able to give into that neighbor and realizing how blessed I was after spending a whole month living in a Navajo reservation, but how happy they were on a daily basis just to be able to get up and be alive. They didn't have all the things and items that we had, but we were able. So I think that was my childhood. There's nothing I would change about my childhood, because it was a fantastic childhood. And then it just moved on and morphed on to better things.
I want you to sit with the comment and the question that you made towards the tail end of the last acknowledgement of this amazing coach that invested so deeply in you. You said, who would I be? Where would I be if it wasn't for him? That's a pretty profound statement to make from a singular influence and a singular person in your life. And I want you to sit with that. I'm sure you have many times, but like, if you had to really define the impact of this coach in your life, and you were to just for a second project where you think you would be or who you think you would be in lieu of him, what does that look like?
Oh, man. I think about that all the time, because one of the things that I wanted to do is I said I wanted to be a stuntman. I was a gymnast before I started. And so instead of going to college, I was enrolled in stunt school. The reason I went to college in California was because it would put me closer to Hollywood so that I can then become a stuntman. And so I think about now I see other people who follow that path. I actually even had some athletes that I coached later that are stuntmen and have been stuntmen. And so I can kind of compare their lives. I think my life is so much deeper. My life is so much. I think of would I've been on drugs, would I've been influenced with those folks that are in the Hollywood world, the things that they travel to do, their bodies that don't work 40 years later as a stuntman that was in the 80s that would have to do things that aren't as protected as they are now, and all of them have had surgeries. All of them have had injuries. What kind of wife or, would I've lived a Hollywood life of, my relationships, would I have these deep and would I have the 8 children that I have, now and have found, I think through that, I guess, it's fun to think but what I really think more than anything is I wouldn't have the life I have now. And I love the life that I have now. So I might have loved that one too. I might have been good at it.
So I just like to play with that sometimes, not like a missed opportunity, but more just like this one decision or this one person. And I've got those same things, right, in my life. The piece I'd ask you to just put into a tighter container, because you are good with words and you are a solid communicator. You explained the relationship you had with him. You explained the time he invested in you. You explained elements of why it was meaningful for you. And you just played down the path of like, here's what it could have looked like. The first question I asked in that last piece, and I'm going to only bring it back because I didn't hear it.
Okay.
And if you said it, that's on me. If you had to somewhat concisely define the impact of this single human on your life, the trajectory of your life, or who you are, how would you describe it?
Maybe I can sum it up like this. Whenever I've had a major instance in my life, he's the first person I call. The day I got my doctorate, there was no one else that I wanted to call Bar. He's been on my podcast. He was at my wedding. He's seen all my kids. I babysitted his kids. I think that can define the impact.
Look, even if you hadn't put any more words to it, and anybody who's watching this can see you right now and can hear in your voice. First, I want to say thank you for your vulnerability and allowing the real emotion to show. That is one of the reasons I love you, is that you're willing to do that. Right.
Yeah.
And yet that's exactly the impact that he had. He almost took your words away when you really stopped to slow down long enough to put words to it. And yet that is one of your gifts, is your ability to have words. He transcends words. And I think that's really, really special and beautiful, and something that's worth honoring, because I also know you've had that same level of impact in other people's lives because of him. And that's pretty special also, because there is a ripple effect. But I want to bring this back into some more of the story, not to take away from him, but just to continue to focus on you. You know, it's interesting. You and I share many, many things in our stories that are different for very big reasons, but very much the same. And there's one that stands out slightly differently. And what's funny is I've never spoken to somebody that this dot connected for me in a way to relate and have a conversation. I don't remember if I shared with you my story on the live. And again, today's not about me, it's about you. But when I was 7, I was run over by a truck and my left arm was torn from my body, reattached, bunch of surgeries, bunch of recovery. And that's all that needs to be said for now. But the reason I highlight that is because, especially given what was happening with my body, I was often overlooked. I was often suppressed. I was often underestimated. I was often labeled for what I could and couldn't do in many respects with my body, right? And so what did I do? I doubled down in different ways to show people that I could still intercept a ball with one hand, still, right, like take over. But it was physical. And yet here's the side that's interesting. I, in many ways, attempted to shut off my brain gifts to highlight where I was getting the criticism and where I desired attention or to be seen as capable. Now, my dad would often ground me, and he was a person that, though he's used his brain, has also used his physical body in reasons to keep us alive and labor and business and different things. And he foresaw what you just outlined in the potential future you could have had. He's like, Brian, I don't want you to have to rely on your body for your life, for your livelihood, for your value. And he always encouraged me to double down on my brain, right? What's interesting is you were exactly opposite. You had the physical gifts that you got the acknowledgement, the credit, that you got the love, the validation, and the connection for, that didn't exist on the other side. But you were basically told, yeah, well, you're not really college material except for the sports and what you can do. And you can be a stuntman. You can do all these things. And this one person grounded you and encouraged you to see beyond that. And you embedded in there, you went from being a special ed student to you've got your doctorate and you've taught and you've done all these other things. And so I would like to better understand, how was your understanding, your awareness, or your relationship with your body and your brain? How did that evolve over the years?
Oh my gosh. Well, like when you're an athlete, you know that your body is the instrument that you get to show the world. But you also know through watching over time that your body isn't going to last forever, and you're going to have to figure out what you can do to be able to do it. And I think for me, I got to go to a race that I was a 400 hurdler. And I got to go to Europe, and I think it was either Helsinki or Stockholm. And I got to run against an athlete who had been the best of the best. His name was Edwin Moses, and he had won 140 straight races in a row. I was happy to be in the race. There was no way I ever thought that I could compete with him or be with another athlete named Kevin Young, who ended up with the world record. And so I'm in these races, and I'm realizing that I'm never going to be the best in the world, no matter I've gotten the talent that God's given me, and I've used it to provide the best of my ability, and he gave them more talent than me. So now what do I do when I get home? What do I do when this time is up? When they tell me I got to get this education because it's going to be what I have to fall back on. Well, I don't want to fall back on it. Well, I decided I'm not going to be a stuntman now. So what do I do in order to utilize now the side, the intellectual side that's going to allow me to get through. Well, I started out as a PE coach, right? So I'm still using my body, right? Now I'm just showing other people how to use their body, because that's what I thought I could do. What was crazy is I came back to Colorado to be a PE teacher, but Colorado made me take a test back in 1988 that said I had to pass a spelling test in order to be a PE teacher. So I failed the spelling test. Back to California. California allowed me to be a PE teacher if I can, they could care less about if I could spell or not. So already Colorado told me I can't live here in this state because I can't spell. And so that goes, okay, well, I guess I have to be a PE teacher. And then somebody said, well, when I told you about computers and technology, I got really interested in this technology. I don't remember if I took a class or I just into it. But then I was able to go get my master's in educational technology. And when that opened up all the doors, because now I'm on the equal field. You have a computer. I have a computer. I just know how to use a computer a little bit better than you do. I know how to use it for whatever I need to use it for. Now I can actually teach you how to use it. And I think what really springboarded me in that situation is as soon as I finished my master's in educational technology, 3 institutions of higher learning asked to hire me so that I could come back and teach it in their schools. Well, now I'm on top of the world, right? I'm a professor. And I think a part of it was because they had no black professors at either, San Diego State did, but universities in San Bernardino in the education department, no black professors. UC Riverside in their education department, no black professors. So because of where we're at as, civil rights in our country, and I'm taking advantage of it, right? I'm going to do my application. And I was really good at communicating as a teacher to get people to do stuff. They hired me. Now I'm smart as far as everybody else is concerned. I can drive up to the university as a professor. And then what do people think about me at that point?
Exactly.
Now they're living out what I've been believing I'm not. They're telling me I am just by the title and the job that I have, because professors can't be dumb, right? Professors can't be special ed. Professors are smarter than regular teachers. Professors are the smartest people. They don't make any money, but they're smart people.
They're really, really smart in a lot of other ways.
Yeah, exactly. So that I think springboarded me in the belief system that I am as good. I'm no longer not enough. Now I'm expecting from myself different than what others are expecting from me. And I don't need anybody else to tell me I can't anymore at this point.
I don't think I realized that you were a Southern California guy for some components. You referenced some schools. I went to University of Redlands, and that's where
I know Redlands. Yeah, I know that.
That's where my wife grew up, and I spent some time at UC Riverside at some concerts and some different things, and so I know that whole area.
I taught for 5 years at Moreno Valley High School. Is where I taught. I was there for 5 years. That was my first PE job. Turned into a computer job there, and that's what allowed me to. Yeah,
that's awesome. You one of the things that I really appreciate about you as well is not just your heart and your presence, but how much you actively and intentionally talk about your family. And you reference, one of your proudest roles being a grandfather. Obviously, you've got 8 of your own children. But all of that happens because of the partnership that you and your wife have. I know very, very much. My wife and I have been together 19 years, and obviously you're older than me. You've got more runway, but I know how meaningful it has been for me to have a partner that held me to who she believed I was capable of being, even when I couldn't see it myself. I know what it was like to have a partner that put up with me and my big energy and the things that I didn't understand, and I had to process and learn and grow through in different ways. And I do know that marriage, and especially long-standing marriage that's committed, is work. It's a choice. It's energy. It's love. It's an emotion, but it's also choice and requires this. I'd love for you to talk just a little bit about your bride, your partner in life, and the impact and what she has meant to you over the years.
Yeah. Man, and my story is interesting, and I don't always share some of it because my partner, my bride, and the love of my life now is the second.
That's okay. That's okay.
And so my first marriage was, I was in college, she was in high school, and, we figured it out, and we had some children together. We were married 24 years. I didn't think that it would ever end. I was not planning on it being gone. I think what happened is comes back to those expectations. And, we actually even adopted two children from New York. They were twins that were on the Maury Povich show at one point. And he had
Dude, I was on the Maury Povich show at one point.
You were?
This is so crazy, like the connecting things between you and I. I'm sorry. Like,
I love
holy
it.
shit. Yeah, like 98 or something, I think I was on the show. That's crazy. Yeah, sorry.
They were on it.
Totally not what you were going, but I was like, I've never heard anybody say that they knew someone on the Maury Povich show.
Yeah, he has an adoption show. They were on in 95.
What?
And we ended up adopting them, and just amazing. They just turned 30 this last year, and they're twins, and so just amazing. And so when I left the teaching and I started a business, I did really well in my business. And it was through the mortgage and financial service industry. And then 2008 happened, and everything fell apart, including my marriage, and including, and can I say I was the best husband ever, and I didn't do anything wrong, and absolutely not. But that ended up happening. And then so from that, I ended up moving back here to Colorado, and she decided to stay out there and, pursue other relationships and other people that she had known. And then I ended up with Renee, who I have now. And so, you think of who God puts into your life and the things that she was able to not only support me through that financial just craziness that we went through, but just her willingness to see me for who I am. And so we've now been about 14 years now that we've been married. So I had 5 kids. She had 3 kids. So that's where we get the 8 kids that we have. So we blended that together, and then all the grandkids that come from there. But it has been, oh my gosh, such a blessing. She has an embroidery business that she does in our basement. Yeah. I work here at home. We spend just about every day, all day together. And I wouldn't ask for anything more. I wouldn't ask for a better time. We both have had hardships and things that we've gone through, and we get to talk about those together. And then we just get a chance not only to love on each other, but to love on our kids and to love on our grandkids, and just to be there for them. And so, I can't wait to spend the rest of my life with her. And, who knows what God has in store for the rest of our lives, but I hope every second of it's with her.
Well, and I appreciate how you navigated that. But what I also would suggest, I mean, even to the way that I asked the question, it's like you pulled back and you're like, well, I got to get honest and clear real quick to be like, make sure that, I'm not married to the same woman this whole time. And by the way, that is completely okay, because I think the nature of the question doesn't really change.
Yeah.
You had a partner that did those things for you for 24 years until that season passed, and there was something that caused you guys to separate. And you're now doing the same in a different season of your life. And it just so happens in this case, it's not the same partner. However, right? Like, I don't think that is negative to you or to anything in the situation, to the nature of the question. And so that would be, I guess, what I would ask you is, if you look at your collective close to 40 years of marriage, right? Like, where have been moments, and you don't have to call attention to who, because I don't want to put you into any weird positions, but like, where have been moments that your partner, or in any respective component, has held a truth mirror in your face that you had to swallow your pride and step into?
Oh my gosh. So many of those that, especially when you're a visionary and you think big and then, because you're a visionary and you sit down and you say, this is how life is going to be. This is what we're going to do. And you paint this huge picture, and then the big picture doesn't happen in the way, or it never unfolds the way that you sell it. And then they go,
certainly not in the timing that you wanted to.
Yeah, ever. Exactly. And then they said, but you said, and then I have to go, I know I said, but sorry, it didn't work out that way. This is the direction we're going now. Many times that's happened, where we've had those conversations of, okay. And they're not, I don't want to say they're realistic conversations, because I don't believe that, we have to be realistic in all aspects of our life. I think we need to dream. I think we need to go for things. I've learned now since, then when we talk about expectations and stuff, when I think about goals now, I don't ever want to put dates on goals. I want to think about my goal as a thing that I'm going to achieve, because I can't control the date. I can't control the timing. I can control the activity. I wish I would have known that when I was 35 and 40 and 30. And now I'm 60, I know it. And life goes a lot better and a lot faster. But yeah, they've held me to the carpet on a lot of things that they've, hey, you said you would be home at this time. Oh, here's the killer one, the location thing. Where are you at? Oh, I'm coming down the 10 or the 10 and I'm nowhere near. I'm still on the 405. Now you got the location thing on your phone. Like, no, you're not. It's going to take you a lot longer to get home than it is now. Why don't you just tell me where you're really at? Well, because I told you I'd be home at, and I'm not going to because I spent my time talking too much to somebody and tell them, whatever I was doing. And so, yeah, definitely called on the carpet on just things on growing and, different jobs that I've had. They would tell me, hey, this isn't, I know this sounds good, but this is not you. You are not, this is not, you don't need to be an administrator at a high school that's a vice principal. That's not where you need to move to. And so, yeah, some really good conversations.
Yeah. Often when we are put into a container by the rest of the world, we've had these expectations. We've experienced some of the shame. Many of us also learn to become very dependent on ourselves, very independent, right? And also what that then means is that because we care so much, we do whatever we can to help other people, which means we become a resource for many others to lean on, right? And to go to for any number of problems. In the time that I've spent with you, feel like both of those are probably true statements for you. And so I would like to understand at kind of this stage in your life, like, how have you learned to trust yourself? How have you learned to trust others? And how does that translate to your ability to communicate and delegate?
Such a great word, because I believe trust is everything. I believe we start and end with trust. Our relationships, if they're good relationships, are because of trust. And if we can communicate with others through trust and who we are and being a person of our word, everything else can come behind it. But trust is, to me, a lot of trust is a muscle. It's something that we're taught that we need to do, even though we say, we were born and we just know how to trust everybody. And we do things that make us trustworthy. And I think that is a learned skill. I don't think it's something that we're born with. I think it's part of our community and things we do. And so when you start being that person who, if I say I'm going to do it, I do it. You start being that person. If I'm going to be around you, there's no reason you would not want me to be in your house. And trust me, if your wife was there, or, not that I want to put myself in that situation, or trust me if you put money on the counter, it begins with that. And now to trust myself, I have to be congruent. I think it was Tony Robbins I heard say that the most powerful force in the universe is being congruent with the identity that you hold for yourself. And so now I have to trust my identity to say, okay, Brian, quit saying stuff if you can't make that happen. And I used to do that all the time, not knowing how I was ever going to do it, and then trying to figure out I needed to become the person who could do the thing that I'm saying I'm doing instead of trying to do it first. And the more that I did that, the more that I can now trust, hey, I know I can do this. I might not know how to do it, but I know I can do it. And so whether it means I have to go on ChatGPT and learn how to do it and get it done. And if I tell you I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it. Now others see me do it. Now you and I in a relationship, if I say I'm going to be there and I'm there all the time, then I'm good. If I'm a person who's late all the time, and, we have this thing in America about time that is just insane and crazy, but we do. And so if I'm 15 minutes late all the time, then you can trust me that I'm going to be 15 minutes late. It's not that you don't trust me. You just don't trust me with the outcome that you really wanted me to have. And so I needed to make sure that the outcomes that I'm telling people that I'm going to do, that is what they get. They don't get a different person than what they thought they were getting. And I guess I'm putting those expectations, but I'm saying, if you're expecting me to do this, then it's because I told you this is how I'm going to do it and why I'm going to do it. Now you can't expect it because I'm going to show up. Instead of putting that expectation on me that I'm going to be, on time every single time, I'm telling you, hey, if I say this is what I'm going to do. So like even my dad yesterday, he goes, what time are you going to be here? I said, Dad, I'm going to be here between 9:15 and 9:45. Because if I tell you 9:27, at 9:26, you're going to call me and ask me where I'm at. So I'm never going to give you, because I don't know what the traffic's going to be like. I've learned that through time that if I can put expectations and be congruent with it, then that trust comes from that. Did that answer? Kind of.
It did, and in different ways than I was expecting. And the piece, there's one portion of what I asked that I think I'll loop back with that I didn't totally hear. But however, you said something that I have not heard in the way that you just said it. And I really like it. So I want to slow down and pay attention to it. And you tied together the expectations with the trust. You talked about being 15 minutes late and doing it consistently, and the trust that the other person has on you. Most of the time it's, I can't trust them to be on time. No, you can't trust them to be on your time.
Yes.
Right? And what's interesting is trust is developed through consistency in actions and whatever those communicate. Mm-hmm. The gap in trust comes down to what are the expectations or standards we hold for that person versus what they've consistently shown us or communicated to us they can and will deliver. Yeah. Right? There's two sides to this. What you did was flip it to the ownership side of I can get myself congruent in what I'm talking about and what my do-say ratio is. Right? That's the controllable. But the uncontrollable that leads to distrust, and you talked about it even as it related to marriages and relationships and, right? Like, well, where are you? I'm on the 10. I'll be home in 10 minutes. Right? Or if I say to my wife, I'll be right there, to her, that's 15 to 20 minutes from now. Mm-hmm. Right there for me is like, no, that's like the next thing I'm going to do, but I haven't confined the timeline. There's a really powerful nuance to this trust because I think there's many situations in which we actually can trust others. We just can't trust them to the expectations we have of them.
Yes.
Can you break that down a little bit more in your lens? Because I have not heard someone say it that way.
Yeah. It is so, and as I'm thinking, you're saying it so eloquently, because when I'm thinking of who I'm going to trust and who I'm going to trust to do what and finding the person, then I have actually put those expectations on them. But if I don't know them well enough, then we have to develop a relationship enough where we do enough of the things to get the consistency that you just talked about, where now I know exactly where they fit. I think of like all the athletes that I've coached over the last 38 years and the relationships that I developed with them. I think of my coach who walked me around the track. As we develop that relationship, now I know exactly what I believe. So they say, well, my goal is that let's say it's a high jumper. And my goal this week is I'm going to jump 7'4". I've never done that before. I'm going to be, I'm going to go jump out of my mind and we're going to get a personal record. Well, I know what the workout was that week. And I know what I could trust based on the outcome that I know that's going to happen. In my mind, am I still going to encourage that person and say, you could do this? You have the capability, you have the potential to be able to do that. But I know based on the work ethic that I just saw and what I know to be true about this person's ability to excel, because it might be a different athlete that could do it, we're probably not going to hit 7'4" this week. But then now how do I change those expectations for them that now we can say, okay, if you do this, and this, and we're consistent in doing this, now 7'4" is going to hit. And I think that's part of coaching and part of, get rid of my expectations based on my beliefs.
Yeah.
And then hit on your expectations based on yours.
Well, I mean, it's like one of those things, like I am, though I like timeliness and diligence, I also have a shitload of forgiveness for the fact that like, if somebody could and would be there on time, they will be. Right. So I give grace and assumption, but with teams, right? If I know somebody's going to deliver, but they are a procrastinator, and they're going to wait until the very last minute, right? The only reason that would cause me as a leader any stress is if I don't trust that they'll actually deliver in the window that they've given me, yes, or I've not communicated with clarity enough to say when I absolutely need it, regardless of where it's at, right? It is a two-way relationship. But it is interesting as well, because even this whole concept, I'm having fun playing with this idea because of the way that you connected it for me. It's congruent with a lot of the stuff that I'll teach. But one of the things that I'll say is, with as much love and respect as I have for my parents, I feel like I grew up in a house where there was one right way to do everything. I just didn't know what that right way was until often I got it wrong.
Yes.
And so what then would happen is I would start to develop a lack of trust in myself because I'm comparing myself to that standard instead of realizing that if the outcome is the same, but the process or path to get there is different, who fucking cares? Yeah. Right? It's like in math. I used to be able to do complex shit in my head and I'd be right. But I had to show my fucking work. Well, I'm dyslexic. That sometimes was a challenge to translate what was up here into what was on the paper. But again, so I would start to not trust myself as if I did not know the math, even though I got the answer right every time doing it in my head, right? Like it's these little things that I hadn't translated that also actually correlate to our trust in ourselves, again, based on the external expectation and the implication that others can't trust us to deliver in that area because it doesn't meet their standard. And that is like, I don't know. I realize we're saying kind of the same thing, but there's a nuance in there that just connected for me that I'm like really grateful for the way you said that, because I'm going to play with how I can integrate this deeper into helping people understand how to redevelop that trust in themselves and to foster it in others.
Yeah. Well, and as we get older, we figure out that there's more than one way to get
Correct.
something done. And I think what makes me a really good teacher is I don't care how you get it done. Find the best way that's for
That works for you
to be able to
That's
get
how I
that
operate
done.
too.
Here's my assignment. It's due at 10 a.m. on whatever day.
Yeah.
Get it done. I don't care.
Yeah.
Well, we have people that are such sticklers for detail. Like, well, you can't use if it's today, well, you can't use any, AI to be able to do any of this. And I'm like, well, why? if my assignment says this is what I need to be done, it's my fault for doing that asking that assignment to be a paper. Why would I assign a paper that all it just shows that you know how to write me something and then I have to read it? I don't want to read that as much as you don't want to write it. So let's find an assignment that actually challenges you to become a better person.
Bingo. Yep.
And then
I love that.
My expectation is so different.
I completely love that. And again, I think for totally different reasons. It's like if I had been forced to tie my shoes with both hands, I would have been screwed. Right? Like if I had been forced to do certain things with the tradition, I can't. There's no way, but I know a way I do it. I type 70 to 80 words a minute with one hand on a normal keyboard and I don't have to look at it. Why? Because that's how I learned.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to move faster on a keyboard and there wasn't a way to do it. So I learned it. And what you're doing is you're just highlighting this in different layers, which is really helping people start to discover how is it going to work for them and how are they going to be open to the idea of what that can look like for themselves and for others? It's huge. It's huge. And by the way, I'm like you, because I'm dyslexic and all these other things. My words have always been my superpower. Guess what? That also means that I can be really intentional now with AI and the tools available to me to make things tangible in a way I never could before and to make things consistent and truly deliverable in a way that I wouldn't have had the capability. I just delivered an 8-page report to a strategic executive alignment session I did for a $50 million client last week because I was able to utilize AI to help me structure this. It was a 10-page document. Prior life, pre-AI, helping me compile it, being able to do it, they would have never even seen a 1-page email from me.
Nope, when you've never even written it.
Whatever you got in that room is what you get, and it would have been worth every fucking penny. But now I can give them a document that recaptures the brilliance that took place in the room. And I love that you're doing that as a teacher. I know we went on all these like random sidebar conversations today, which I really love, but I do want to come back and fully respect like your journey is even in how you operate today, like your journey to freedom. It's part of your branding. It's what you teach. It's how you've led in elements with your podcast and with your speaking and with your coaching and with different components of it. And a lot of your life has demonstrated the journey that's led to your freedom. Right? I'd like you to better describe, though, why did you call it Journey to Freedom? And what is it specifically that you're teaching people to do?
Gotcha. Well, it is because I want people to realize that it is a journey, that we don't just arrive here. We're all going to arrive at different times. And the freedom in it is knowing that you're capable of doing so much more than what others told you that you were capable of doing. And that journey never stops. I'm just more excited today at 60 years old about the next 20 years of my life than I've ever been, because now I have those experiences and those things behind me that allow me to see what's possible, allow me to see how I can be enabled to move forward. And I thought it was just a great, not only is, when we think about freedom, and I work a lot with African American men of what the freedom has been in this, our civil rights movement from slavery up until now, and what that means, what that journey has been for the people who have come before us. And how do we not take advantage of the lessons that they've taught us? And part of that journey to me means I need to reach back and I need to understand history. Not that I'm not going to repeat all of it, because some of it I'm going to, because that's how we are as people, is we have to try everything out. We can't just take somebody else's word for it. But then once I didn't take somebody else's word for it and I tried it and realized I'm stupid and it didn't work. I don't mean stupid in the fact that I'm a super person. I mean stupid in the fact that I should have just listened to them in the first place. But I don't do that. And now I move forward. I'm going, wait a minute. That's what they did. That's how they got out of this. And if I can rely on that experience, now who can I call? Who can I communicate with? Who can I partner with? Because I have deficits in my ability, or my ability to see the whole picture. And that person can see that part of the picture for me. So I need to trust that I, instead of me trying to figure it out, if I want to do it faster in my journey, then I need to go communicate with somebody who already knows what they're doing. Yeah. And then that's freedom, right? That freedom is, wait, I don't need to know everything to be able to do everything.
Mm-hmm. I am somebody that I would suggest is very much a humanitarian and very much cares about civil rights in pretty much every category, right? I recognize the package I'm in as a white male. I recognize the privilege that's associated with that. I recognize all these different components. What I often tell people is I'm also used to, for my life, often being the only one in every room I ever walk into because of the situation I have. And so though I don't know what it's like to be a black man or a transgender person or any other component, what I do often know is what it's like to be the only one in every room. And I know that you know that as well. One of the things that, and again, I don't often talk politics or religion, particularly because I don't have any desire to polarize us as humanity when I think there's so much work that's being done together. But you are somebody that has set up places for others to be successful. And you even talked about, you've done a lot of work with groups of black men. You've helped structure, and you've also to yourself talked about the impact of civil rights at different stages in your own journey based on wherever our country was. I am in zero way asking you to be a token or a poster or a spokesperson for anybody other than yourself. But what I'm curious about is if you were to describe the civil arts arc and movement that you've witnessed in your life and where you believe we find ourselves today, how would you communicate that?
Oh man, it's so good, because my history and my family, show so much of, I would even consider the evil of things that could happen. My mom tells me stories where my grandpa had to run the Klan off of his front yard. My dad talks about the colored drinking fountains that he had to drink from when he was growing up. This isn't many generations.
No, it's literally,
this is still recent. My grandma had to leave a reservation that she should have never even had to be on, because she was being harassed. And so, and I think of what the education in the Indian schools that they called them, that folks had to go to. So that is part of who I am. That is part of the DNA that is part of it. And so to say that it didn't exist or it doesn't exist today, to me is just silly. So where I look at it is, where do I go from here? How do we learn from the mistakes from our own experience? Well, some of us have to have some of that experience. And so when I take, last year I took 18 black men down to Birmingham, Alabama, and we went to Birmingham, Selma, and then Montgomery, and went to the museum. And we're going to do it again this year. And I'm going to do it over and over again, because I grew up in Denver, Colorado. I didn't grow up in the South. I didn't, until I went to the South and felt the air of the South and what it meant in 2025, when I see people making $2.20 an hour, as restaurant, employees in there, and then just feeling the weight of what the folks who went through, and then going to the museum and seeing some of that. Now, when I come back, I have a different empathy. I have a different thought process, and I have a different journey for me to take other people out of that, because some people have been impacted way more than I have. I said, I loved my childhood, but I know a whole bunch of people who didn't love their childhood and had to deal with it in a bigger way. It doesn't have to continue, and it doesn't have to. And we are products of the people that we experienced as we grew up or went through life. So if I don't find ways to help people have other experiences, even if they're remembrance experiences or their new experience where trust is involved, then all they have to connect to is what their belief system is as the people that are around them when they grew up. So it is vitally important to have those connections and make those connections, and then give opportunities that people don't know or are not aware of that can change their lives. And as I've recapped the 18 men who went there in January, lives have been transformed.
I have no doubt. I very much know the power of experiences like that. And I'm grateful that you're doing it. It leads me to ask another question that's very direct. And again, I'm not asking you to represent anybody other than your own stance. But as an educator, as somebody who values what history has and can teach us, as somebody who understands the value of experience and wanting the perspectives to ground and root yourself and others in those, what do you believe the damage is of anyone trying to rewrite history, take down memorials, take down statues, act as if certain crazy violent things that have happened, not just to the black folks within our country, but many others across the globe and in this country have been faced and had injustices. What do you think the impact or damages of people not acknowledging what has already happened?
I love that you asked that, because it immediately reminds me of my dad. He had a person that he married, and that was not my mom. And she went into all of his photo albums and she cut out all the faces of my mom in his old photo album. Oh my goodness. And you go, that happened. That was part of his history. I'm part of his history. I'm part of his life. How do we take that out of what happened? And when I think about history is usually spoken from the point of view of the conqueror or whoever took over at that point. And
many
so
of our
without
history
other
books are very much that way. Yes.
We can't take those away. When I think of some of the monuments and I think of some of the things, if we're celebrating the things that they did as a result of that monument, then that might not be the best monument to put up there, because that just reminds us to celebrate something that was bad. I don't think we take it out of what happened. I think we still tell the story of what happened. I just don't think we celebrate sometimes of some of those things, like if the statue said this person, beat 100 slaves, and had a plantation, and we celebrate his life. Well, maybe no, we can say that happened, but maybe we don't celebrate it. But we cannot take away history, and to pretend that, if somebody wrote a book, that we're going to ban a book that somebody wrote. Well, they wrote a book from their point of view. So why is their point of view not something? You don't have to read it. You don't have to be the one. I don't know.
You don't have to agree with it. You don't have to read it. You don't have to anything. But yet we're seeing book burnings and limiting books within educational systems across the country right now. And by the way, I completely agree with you. The conqueror, right? That's one thing. I'm even referencing the monuments of like civil rights leaders. Yeah. Right. Those that have done and represented good things. Right. I agree with you. I don't think we should ever celebrate the moments that create damage, divide, and destruction. But we do need to be knowledgeable of them, and we need to find the facts that we can teach, right? Independent of bias wherever possible. And then at the same time, to your point. Anyway, the relevance of that with your family pictures, though, was very spot on. And I'm really grateful that you grounded it in your personal story before you even gave your answer, because it's literally like cutting your ancestors out of the pictures because someone didn't like them being there. Yeah. Right. And as simple as that might sound, I do also, as somebody who doesn't want to live in the past, but wants to learn from the past, I struggle to see anybody trying to act as if the past doesn't happen, whether it's in yourself, in your own experiences, or within the history of humanity that we can learn from. As we come to an end on this, because you've been awesome, and I really appreciate all the directions you've allowed me to take this. you've done a lot. You've worked with a lot. You've had a lot of success. And are continuing to be on that journey. You said it yourself. There is no final destination, right? Where do you find yourself today? What would you describe as your greatest area of resistance, your biggest challenge in life or business, or the area that you're focused on, increasing muscular tone in, whether it's trust or anything else, right? Like, what are you working on right now? And what are the blocks or challenges you see as a result?
Yeah, I think my biggest challenge is the older I get and the more people that I get to have relationships with, the more curious I get. And the more curious I get, the more things I want to do. And my body is just not capable of having more time. There's only so much time in the day that I can explore this or explore that. And so now for me, the challenge is picking what's going to have the most impact with the time that I have. And maybe it's writing for more books. Maybe it's, doing some more speaking in front of bigger crowds. Maybe it's spending more time with my grandkids to tell unique stories. I don't know what that is. I can't wait for it to happen. But my challenge is when I wake up every day, my mind is going 100 miles an hour of all the things that I could get done today. And I try to make a list and I don't get to my list because there's so many things that I want to do. There's so many people I want to talk to. It's just, and I guess my fear is that my mind stays sharp. So my health has to be important so that I have another 20 years to continue to add to it. Because what I put in my body is going to determine how well I'm able to do it. And, by God's grace, I'm praying that, 20 years from now, my dad's 86. I ran a track meet with him last week. He was literally in a track meet and he ran 100 meters and I was right next to him. And so that's my prayer is, he's 80. That's 26 more years at least that I got to be able to do all the things in a day. So.
It's a really interesting way that you answered that question as well, my friend, because I could take it in a bunch of different ways. But I think the thread that pulls through is this whole body versus brain arc, right? Yeah. I mean, you even hit it yourself. It's like, look, at one point, you didn't even know if you were going to be able to be smart, have the brain, be a professor. Your identity was not that. It was, I'm going to use my body and I'm going to take my body as far as I can get it. And now you're literally wanting your body to go as far as possible so that your brain can have as much opportunity as possible.
That's so true.
And that's really fascinating. And I just love, again, that was your journey to freedom. Yeah. Is the recognition of how all of it represents you and how do you actually allow yourself to live the integrated, intentional life that you want to live. I know that we're going to have podcasts and books and different things all in the resources for folks to be able to find you. You've brought your heart today. And for that, I'm very grateful. I don't do this for every guest, but I feel the need to ask you, is there a closing message you'd like to leave our audience with?
I think I would love to do it because the closing message is you can become the person that you were meant to be if you can get rid of those expectations that others have on you. And there's absolutely nothing in your life that's stopping you from doing it but you. And so you need to get around some people. You need to listen to things like this. You need to engage in learning more about who you are specifically, and then go out and actually do it. But become that person. And I believe in you 100,000% that you can. Let's figure out a way to drop all those expectations that others have for you. And in some cases, it's the expectations you have for yourself, and let's change those.
Brian, Dr. B, thank you. I really appreciate your time with us today.
Thank you for having me. It's been amazing. Yeah. It's such a great conversation. I love it.
Dude, I love it. I love it. And for those of you that watch Dr. B flip open his lid and jump in, I mean, he hit it right out of the gate. He owned the fact that he was labeled a special ed student who's become a professor, a teacher, a coach, an entrepreneur, an impact maker, a father, a grandfather, a husband, so much more than what was confined to the body that he was given and the expectations that were layered on him. And as he learned to trust himself even more, the more he realized and learned that who he was all that mattered, and loving himself, accepting himself, and owning himself without any need to defend, justify, or protect is his journey to freedom. And yet there have been multiple people who've invested in him to allow him to see himself in moments he could not. So if you need folks like that, reach out to him, reach out to me. But ultimately, the internal journey is the one that you need to go on. And the only way to get there is to flip open your lid and scan your can. We'll see you next time.
What you can probably tell by now is that I love telling these stories, but what I love even more is the impact that's coming from them. You see, we're on a mission to impact over 1 billion lives as quickly as possible, but to do that, we need you. See, we believe that moved people move people. And so all I'm asking is if you've resonated, connected with any of the messaging, please consider commenting, sharing, leave a rating and review. Thank you so much for tuning into Flipping the Lid. And if you want more information on the show, how to become a guest, how to recommend a guest, or any of the other details, head over to flippingthelid.com. We'll see you there.